Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe at work, or maybe just watching the news, where it felt like the people making the really big decisions were kind of sealed off from the results?
Mhm.
They get all the credit if things go brilliantly, but if it all goes spectacularly wrong,
Yeah.
well, the consequences just seem to land on everyone else, not them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a frustrating feeling, isn't it, that disconnect?
Totally. And today we're taking a deep dive into that exact idea. We're exploring what the author Nassim Taleb famously calls skin in the game, that really critical, often invisible link between risk, accountability, and, well, real expertise.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is that this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It's actually a fundamental principle that quietly but very powerfully shapes how our whole world works.
Really? How so?
Well, we're talking about everything from, huge decisions in finance and corporate leadership right down to the subtle ways we trust each other day to day. We'll be looking at how the presence, or maybe more importantly, the absence of personal exposure to the consequences, it doesn't just sway individual choices. It actually fosters either, recklessness on one hand or genuine, deep responsibility and maybe even wisdom on the other.
Hmm. The ethics of risk, essentially,
Uh-huh.
and who has to bear it.
Exactly. Who bears the burden?
So our mission today is to really explore Taleb's core argument. This idea that our modern world is increasingly, maybe dangerously, full of people who get to enjoy all the upside of their decisions without ever having to face the downside.
Hmm. Which, he argues, leads to really harmful outcomes, often system-wide.
Right, so we'll analyze why having that skin in the game isn't just, a nice to have, but maybe an essential ingredient for real accountability, for fairness, and for developing a deep understanding, not just a superficial one.
Hopefully, by the end of this deep dive, you'll come away with a powerful new lens, a way to critically look at professional life, public policy, maybe even your own interactions.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's start maybe where this argument really hits home. These situations where there's a really clear imbalance or asymmetry in who's actually carrying the risk.
Right.
Think about those moments when the decision makers, the people in charge, are just completely insulated from the very real, often painful downsides of their choices. Meanwhile, others,
Mhm.
often a lot of others,
Mm.
are left holding the bag.
It's a dangerous disconnect. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I mean, so many of the major financial crises we've seen, they really have their roots in exactly these kinds of asymmetries.
How so?
Well, the incentive structures, the way people were paid or rewarded, they often perversely encouraged incredibly risky behavior. But, crucially, without imposing any corresponding meaningful penalties on the people who actually started it all.
Oh, well, okay.
We see this so clearly in the financial sector, right? Decision makers can profit hugely from these complex, often opaque systems, while being almost entirely shielded from the severe losses when those systems inevitably, break down.
It's that classic phrase, isn't it? Privatizing the gains.
And socializing the losses. Exactly. It's a textbook case.
And one of the most, well, glaring and painful examples has to be the subprime mortgage crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
Thinking back to the financial mess that people like Michael Burry, from The Big Short, were diagnosing way back in 2003, he wasn't just observing, he was actively digging into the rock.
Right. He saw something others didn't, or maybe didn't want to see.
He identified what he called the extension of credit by instrument and all this complicated financial stuff, dreamed up for the sole purpose of lending money to people who could never repay it. That's not just bad loans, is it? That's a fundamental detachment.
It's a complete detachment from the real-world impact, a total absence of skin in the game by the people originating and packaging these things up. They knew, or should have known, they wouldn't be around when the whole thing collapsed.
Yeah.
And Burry himself, he had this really unsettling realization, didn't he? He noted how making money for clients could, in his words, get morbid when you start making investments that work out extra great if a tragedy occurs.
That's...
It is. It highlights this truly perverse incentive structure. You profit directly, hugely, from other people's misfortunes, and the decision maker is often totally insulated from the human cost, the societal cost. It's a deep ethical problem, baked right into the system.
And it wasn't just him seeing it, right? Even within the big banks.
Oh, absolutely. We saw this shocking lack of understanding even within the institutions trading these complex things. Like Deutsche Bank debt collectors, they were apparently stunned to find that Morgan Stanley's own traders misunderstood their own trade regarding these subprime CDOs collateralized debt obligations.
So the experts didn't even understand the complex things they were selling.
It seems that way. These CDOs were basically huge bundles of loans, lots of risky mortgages mixed in, chopped up, resold. And these traders, the supposed experts, they apparently failed to grasp the basic fact that the riskiest bonds within these things were 100% correlated, meaning when one collapsed, they all collapsed.
So it was a house of cards.
Completely. And even when they had chances to get out, to cut their losses at, say, 1.2 or 1.5 billion, which sounds huge, but was maybe manageable, then they declined. It just shows this profound failure to grasp the real risk they were holding.
Because ultimately, the personal fallout for them was limited.
That seems to be the implication. It wasn't their personal wealth on the line in the same way. Their skin wasn't truly in that game compared to the massive institutional and societal costs that followed. It's a classic example.
It really is. When your own neck isn't directly on the line, your judgment just complain.
Yeah.
It suffers, doesn't it?
It seems to. And this isn't just about huge systemic crises. We see it all through history with things like insider trading, right? Individuals using privileged, asymmetrical information, they know something others don't for massive personal gain without any fair exposure to the risk.
Right, like the Den of Thieves examples. Ivan Brzezinski buying shares just before a public announcement. Clearly inside info.
Exactly. Or Martin Siegel and Richard Freeman sharing secrets about a takeover bid, making millions for their network. And even those tricky cases, like Lan Reich, the supposedly upstanding member of the bar, he didn't trade himself, didn't take money directly, but he provided the crucial information. He benefited from the influence, the connection, but without the direct financial risk of the trade itself.
It all screams asymmetry, doesn't it? One side holds all the cards, protected from the downside, while everyone else is unknowingly playing a rigged game.
Precisely. And the intelligent investor offers a great historical parallel here, warning about unsound corporate expansions.
Okay. Like what?
Well, the Ling Temco Vault story. Commercial bankers lent huge amounts of money to this company. Even though its finances were clearly shaky, its ability to cover interest charges didn't meet conservative standards.
So why lend?
Well, the book says it was not good business for them, the bankers, but it was worse in its implications for the company's shareholders, who were the ones truly exposed if things went south.
So the bankers were insulated again.
It demonstrates that disconnect. The banker's short-term decision to make the loan wasn't aligned with the long-term health of the company or its actual owners, the shareholders. Their primary skin was in getting the loan done, not in the company's ultimate survival.
And we see this with financial innovation too, right? Sometimes the complexity itself seems to be the point.
Absolutely. The technological revolution in financial services points this out. Things like option-adjustable rate mortgages, structured investment vehicles, all sorts of complex securities. They fueled the crisis and led to significant losses for financial institutions and their customers.
Because the risk was hidden.
Often, yes. The complexity meant the risk was transferred, obscured, made incredibly hard to track. So when the underlying assumptions failed, which they inevitably did, the losses were widespread. And the innovators, the ones who profited from creating these things, often didn't bear the full transparent weight of those losses. More asymmetry.
Which brings us, I suppose, inevitably, to Enron.
Enron, yes. A truly dark example. Our sources show a culture where skin in the game wasn't just missing, it was actively twisted and undermined.
How so?
Take the example of John Bourget, who is apparently told to move some profits from 1986 into 1987 and create fictitious losses through fake deals. This wasn't him acting alone. It was because Enron management had requested it.
Wow. Top-down pressure for fraud.
Exactly. Driven by this desperate need to meet artificial earnings targets. Or Andy Fasto's plan to sell a tiny stake in a practically non-existent subsidiary, EES, for a huge sum, just to justify valuing the whole thing at nearly $2 billion on paper.
Even though it wasn't making any money.
Right. It wasn't close to making a profit. It wasn't really even much of a business, yet the whole point was just to push up the company's stock without any real underlying value. Pure illusion.
And this created a dangerous mindset internally.
It fostered what insiders called a bulletproof mentality. Because the market rewarded every new move they made, Enron's employees started to think they couldn't make mistakes. They thought they were invincible.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. This isn't just about corporate arrogance. It shows how, when accountability is systematically stripped away, even success built on lies can create this collective delusion, a systemic blindness that comes from being detached from real consequences. And the collapse destroyed countless lives, not just paper profits.
Maybe most shocking is how many people apparently knew something was wrong, or at least suspected it.
That's right. The sources say the circle of people who knew or should have known that Enron's glittering surface masked a different reality was surprisingly large.
Who are we talking about?
Analysts, bankers, the credit rating agencies, even the press. Many were apparently captivated by the company's transformation. It points to a systemic failure. People who had access to information, who should have seen the red flags, didn't act decisively.
Why not?
Well, likely a mix of things. Conflicting incentives, fear of losing business, maybe just. A fundamental lack of direct personal skin in the game for the ultimate consequences of Enron's implosion. They were watching the show, not starring in it.
So, okay, it's not always about deliberate deception or fraud. Sometimes this asymmetry, this lack of skin in the game, comes from something else. Maybe fear.
Exactly. Sometimes the absence of real risk-taking, the reluctance to put your skin out there, comes from a different calculation entirely, the fear of losing what you already have, even if that means missing out on the future.
Incumbent inertia.
That's it. We see this play out constantly in corporate strategy.
There's a term for that, isn't there?
Yeah, in the Seven Powers framework, they call it counterpositioning. It's where a newcomer adopts a new, superior business model, which the incumbent does not mimic due to anticipated damage to their existing business.
So the established company sees the better way, but won't do it.
Right. Their existing business, often very profitable, acts like an anchor. Adopting the new model, even if it's the future, would hurt their current revenue streams too much in the short term. It feels like too much risk, too much skin to lose right now.
They're protecting today over winning tomorrow.
Precisely. They prioritize short-term stability over long-term adaptation, often fatally.
Netflix is the classic example, surely.
Oh, absolutely. Reed Hastings, the CEO, even wrote back in 2005 acknowledging that DVDs would make big profits for maybe another decade, but movies over the internet are coming.
He saw it coming.
Clearly. Incredible foresight. But it also shows that powerful short-term profit motive. Their hugely successful DVD by mail business was a cash cow. Shifting aggressively to streaming too soon would cannibalize that. It was a real threat to their existing skin.
It took real courage to make that leap eventually.
Immense courage. And a willingness to put the entire company's future on the line, to essentially disrupt themselves.
And this ties into that marketing myopia idea too, doesn't it? Companies getting trapped.
Exactly, falling into the mass production trap. They start focusing internally on our company's needs when we should be emphasizing our customers.
Why does that happen?
Often it's driven by huge existing investments, factories, distribution networks, established processes. This internal focus makes them incredibly vulnerable to smaller, nimbler companies that are focused on customer needs, not just existing products.
So the incumbents are trying to protect the skin they already have, the assets they've built.
At the expense of adapting to where the market is actually going, they're afraid to risk what they have to gain what they could need.
And power dynamics play a huge role here too. The example from the Four, about the New York Times board and about.com.
Oh, that's a striking one, yeah. They debated shutting off Google search for about.com because about depended so heavily on Google for traffic.
But they were afraid Google would retaliate.
Exactly. The fear was Google might counter by tweaking its algorithm, relegating about to search engine purgatory. It shows this massive asymmetrical power. Google was like the lord over a crucial swath of the internet, and about.com was just a tenant farmer.
Google held all the cards. No reciprocal risk.
Precisely. Google dictated terms without having the same skin in the game. One party had everything to lose, the other very little.
Which leads right back to that core issue of corporate inertia. Big companies struggling to adapt.
Yeah, as Purple Cow puts it, giant brands with big factories and quarterly targets, organizations with significant corporate inertia and low thresholds for perceived risks. They're often the big losers when truly remarkable, innovative products emerge.
Because their structures hold them back.
Their established structures, their legacy thinking, their aversion to anything that feels like a big risk, it makes it awfully difficult to be remarkable. They can't truly innovate because they're too afraid of losing the skin they already have, however comfortable it might be.
It's a powerful case for needing to constantly challenge the status quo, even when it hurts.
Absolutely. Or you risk becoming irrelevant.
Okay, so let's shift focus slightly. What happens when this lack of skin in the game plays out in the realm of political power? When the structures of government themselves allow powerful people to make huge decisions affecting millions?
Without having any direct personal stake in the outcomes for the citizens they're supposed to serve?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the absence of skin in the game can have truly far-reaching societal consequences.
And Robert Moses, the figure from the power broker, seems like the ultimate example here,
He really is, almost terrifyingly so. Moses wielded this incredible, almost unchecked authority over New York City for decades.
making huge decisions.
Huge decisions. Transformative, sometimes destructive, like renovating Tavern on the Green, then handing it over to a favorite concessionaire for a nominal rental, which of course led to sky-high prices for the public.
And Moses himself faced no consequences.
Very little direct personal accountability. Not for the public's experience, not for the financial details. He was insulated by layers of power, political maneuvering. His skin seemed completely untouched by the actual results for ordinary New Yorkers.
And people trusted him, didn't they, even when he was doing questionable things?
That's what's so striking. Early reformers who initially backed him, they really struggled to reconcile their idealized image of him with the fact that he was now contemplating destroying property in Central Park, which did not belong to him, but to the entire city.
But they still believed in him.
Most still believed his motives were pure. It highlights this dangerous tendency to trust perceived intent over tangible, often devastating consequences. Charisma and good intentions can be a powerful shield, blurring the lines of accountability.
And this idea of him delegating work as his power grew.
Right, the delegation without genius. As Moses took on more and more projects, he had to delegate authority. But as the author points out, authority is delegatable, genius is not.
So the quality dropped off.
The less distinguished these projects emerged. But crucially, Moses remained distant from the consequences of these poorer outcomes. He was still the visionary, the grand planner. His skin was tied to the big idea, not the often flawed execution on the ground.
This connects a bit to Hayek's ideas in The Road to Serfdom, doesn't it? About power and control.
It does resonate. Hayek talks about individuals who tasted the powers of coercive control during wartime and then find it difficult to reconcile themselves with the humbler roles of a market economy later.
A desire to keep that power.
A desire to maintain influence, to shape policy, often without personally bearing the costs or risks associated with, say, a centrally planned system versus a free market.
Hayek also pointed out that odd tenderness towards bondholders, the rentiers.
Yes, the rentiers, people living off income from capital, like bond interest, without active work. Hayek noted a remarkable tenderness which many socialists might show towards them, potentially protecting these effortless fixed incomes, even while opposing entrepreneurial profits.
So preferring low-risk income for some groups over the risk-taking of others.
It demonstrates a potential bias towards protected, guaranteed income, contrasting sharply with the risks faced by those who truly put their skin in the game by building businesses and innovating. It's another form of asymmetry.
And then you have the sheer influence of wealth, like with John D. Rockefeller in Titan.
Right. He closely watched politics, always alert to any potential threats to his business interests. He might have been personally stingy with political donations, but...
Standard Oil wasn't.
Exactly. The clandestine payoffs made by Standard Oil were a different matter, and Rockefeller never stinted in making payments to get the job done.
Using power and wealth to shape the game.
Precisely. To influence outcomes, protect interests, and implicitly shield the decision makers at Standard Oil from risks and rules that might apply to smaller players. It's a subtle but powerful asymmetry, bending the rules when you have enough resources to avoid the downside.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the problems, the dangers of not having skin in the game. Let's flip it. What does it look like when it's present? How does shared risk, direct accountability actually drive better decisions?
Right. And what's really fascinating here is how often the solution to incredibly complex problems isn't more top-down control. It's actually, maybe counterintuitively, about distributing ownership more widely and making sure everyone understands the shared stakes.
So decentralizing responsibility.
In a way, yes. When leaders and their teams are genuinely invested, deeply accountable for the outcomes, that shared skin in the game completely transforms the incentives. It fosters real responsibility, leads to much better decision-making, and boosts collective performance significantly. It's about aligning everyone's interests.
Which brings us to that Navy SEAL principle from extreme ownership. No bad teams, Only bad leaders.
Absolutely a critical idea. That Hell Week anecdote is so powerful. It just vividly shows how leadership directly impacts team performance, especially under intense pressure.
The leader takes the blame.
Always. If a team is not performing well, the leader must look in the mirror and say, I am to blame. That is true leadership skin in the game. Total, non-negotiable accountability for your team's results. It forces leaders to fix problems because the buck stops right there.
And it's not just the top leader, right? It's collective.
Exactly. Extreme ownership emphasizes that leadership isn't one person leading a team. It is a group of leaders working together up and down the chain of command to lead.
Everyone steps up.
Right. The source gives examples where junior leaders picked up the slack for the commander without any ego about infringing on my leadership turf. It's about mutual support, genuinely shared responsibility. The leader has to believe in the mission, understand things will go wrong, but the team's ability to adapt and support each other, with every single person owning their part, that's what makes it work. Shared ownership builds resilience.
Blue ocean leadership pushes this idea further, doesn't it?
Mm.
Empowering leaders at all levels.
It does. It argues that the key to a successful organization is having empowered leaders at every level, because often outstanding performance comes down to the motivation and actions of middle and frontline leaders who are in closer contact with the market.
So the people closest to the action have skin in the game.
Exactly. They have a real, tangible stake in the outcomes they influence directly. The book also talks about using leadership canvases discussed collectively, so everyone feels like they're in the same boat, making them more open to change and solving problems together. Empower the front lines.
And the discipline of teams talks about mutual accountability. How is that different?
It takes shared responsibility to the next level. It demands shared leadership and mutual accountability, where the group, not just the formal leader, defines the purpose and holds itself accountable.
That sounds harder. Maybe fuzzier.
It is harder. The source acknowledges individual accountability feels more comfortable for leaders who like control, because with mutual accountability, no one person is clearly accountable, and therefore everyone is off the hook if things don't work out.
The diffusion of responsibility problem.
Right. But the book argues you have to overcome that apparent fuzziness. The extra work required to integrate individual with mutual accountability is precisely what really pays off when facing tough challenges. It yields far better results than any single leader model because everyone truly shares the burden and the success.
It's about genuine empowerment then. Radical candor talks about managers needing to relinquish unilateral authority.
Yes. To build real trust, to make team members feel free at work. That takes enormous discipline, giving up control, letting others have a real stake in decisions and outcomes.
And seeking outside views.
Crucial. Getting an outside perspective from a boss, a peer, HR, especially when evaluating people if there's disagreement, it promotes objectivity, reduces the risk of one biased viewpoint deciding someone's fate. It ensures no single person's skin in the game becomes a tool for unfairness.
And the effective executive also emphasizes this responsibility pushdown.
Absolutely. Peter Drucker wrote that effective executives demand that their subordinates take responsibility too. They ask, what are the contributions for which this organization and I, your superior, should hold you accountable?
Shifting the conversation.
Exactly. From top-down orders to mutual understanding of accountability and how best to use everyone's skills. And the effective executive organizes disagreement.
Encourages conflict.
Not conflict for its own sake. It's a strategy to protect him against being taken in by the plausible but false or incomplete, and to force the imagination. It leads to better decisions because more people have a genuine stake in testing the assumptions, voicing counter-arguments without fear.
And decisions need action.
Critically. As Drucker says, unless a decision has degenerated into work, it is not a decision. It is at best a good intention. Real decisions require implementation, making the execution part of the decision-maker's skin in the game. You own the follow-through.
Okay, so sometimes skin in the game isn't just about structure or accountability. It's literally about, well, personal sacrifice, betting on yourself, right, even when it looks crazy.
Yes, that's the heart of personal investment, the entrepreneurial spirit. That's what often drives true breakthrough innovation.
And Elon Musk seems like a prime, if maybe extreme, example.
He really does. That story from his early banking days, identifying billions of dollars for free opportunity backed by the U.S. Treasury, a really innovative idea.
But his bosses rejected it.
Completely. They'd been burned on Brazilian and Argentinian debt before. Musk was stunned. He realized bankers often just copied what everyone else did, and wouldn't pick up a giant pile of gold sitting in the middle of the room if it wasn't the conventional thing to do.
Showing his willingness to take risks based on his own analysis.
Exactly. His conviction, his personal skin, was invested in understanding the underlying situation, not just following the herd.
And his personal financial risk with Tesla. It's legendary.
It really is a case study in skin in the game. The company burning through $4 million a month, desperate for cash. Musk had to lean on friends just to try to make payroll. Employees were writing checks to keep the company going, turning salaries into investments they never expected to see again.
His brother, too, right?
Kimball Musk sold what he had left and put it into Tesla, apparently just days before potential bankruptcy. These weren't just abstract business decisions. They were deeply personal bets, putting their entire financial futures on the line.
And the risk wasn't just financial. His brother worried about jail time.
That's right. Kimball worried about Elon using customer prepayments for the Roadster to keep the lights on. He said, "I'm sure Elon would have found a way to make things right, but he definitely took risks that seemed like they could have landed him in jail for using someone else's money."
Wow, that's extreme skin in the game.
It shows the exposure wasn't just financial. It was legal, reputational. He was essentially gambling his own freedom on his conviction, willing to face extreme personal consequences.
That kind of spirit connects to the idea in Art of the Start 2.0 about viability over fundability.
Yes, absolutely. The book points out that unproven teams in unproven markets with unproven technologies often produce epic startups. The focus for these entrepreneurs is on building something that works, that's viable, not just on raising huge amounts of money.
So they start lean, take risks.
Exactly. Entrepreneurs with real skin in the game are often more willing to start small, use things like crowdfunding, prove the concept's value first. Their personal commitment fuels the resilience through the tough early days because they're deeply invested in the actual product succeeding.
And creating a culture where mistakes are okay is crucial for this.
Absolutely vital. The new 1-Minute Manager talks about workplaces where employees are taught to laugh at ourselves when we make a mistake and get over it by doing better work.
So mistakes are learning opportunities.
Exactly. It encourages taking necessary risks, learning from missteps, knowing they're part of the process, not career enders. And that's why ongoing feedback, like performance review should be an ongoing process, is so important. Quick feedback on one behavior at a time helps people adjust fast, reducing negative consequences, increasing engagement, fostering agility.
This reminds me of the ancient wisdom from the richest man in Babylon, the gold lender, Mathon.
Yes. He learned through direct, painful experience. He says he will no longer lend any of it where I am not confident that it is safe and will be returned to me. Neither will I lend it where I am not convinced that its earnings will be promptly paid to me.
Caution born from loss.
Precisely. His wisdom, better a little caution than a great regret, comes directly from the experience of losing his own hard-earned gold. That's personal skin in the game, transforming abstract principles into tangible, lived lessons in every decision.
So this raises a really core question, doesn't it? Can you truly be an expert on risk if you haven't felt its sharp edges yourself?
It's a great question, and our sources strongly suggest a deep, almost essential connection between experiencing consequences firsthand and developing sound judgment. Genuine expertise seems forged not just in theory, but in direct, often painful experience.
Yeah.
Suffering consequences leads to a more realistic, pragmatic assessment of risk and value.
Like JP Morgan's advice, sell down to the sleeping point.
Exactly. As A Random Walk Down Wall Street discusses, that highlights the deeply personal, psychological side of investing. It's not just about potential returns, it's about your individual capacity to handle the stress of potential losses.
Finding your personal risk tolerance.
Right. The source links high investment rewards to accepting substantial risk, but finding your sleeping point is one of the most important investment steps you must take. It's about recognizing your emotional skin in the game. If an investment keeps you up at night, you're probably overexposed. Your peace of mind matters.
And the most important thing eliminated takes this further, arguing that real conviction is needed in downturns.
Yes, it states forcefully that investors with no knowledge of or concern for profits, dividends, valuation, or the conduct of business simply cannot possess the resolve needed to do the right thing at the right time.
Why not?
Because when the market's crashing, when everyone's panicking, they can't possibly have the confidence needed to hold or buy at severely reduced prices. Theory isn't enough. You need a deeper understanding, a conviction, a form of intellectual skin in the game, belief in underlying value, personal fortitude to withstand that pressure.
So you need to know what something is actually worth.
Exactly. The best foundation for successful investment is value. You must have a good idea of what the thing you're considering buying is worth. It implies an active, informed, personal commitment, not just following the crowd.
We also see this link between experience and judgment in leadership examples, like from my years with General Motors.
Right, the story of Dutch Kindleberger at North American Aviation. A very capable engineer, great technical skills, but initially very little general administrative experience.
But he recognized his limits.
That was the key. Recognizing his own limitations, he relied at first on the General Motors directors for advice and counsel. That's not weakness. It's humility, wisdom. Seeking help when your own experience, your own skin in the game in a particular area is lacking. It's smart risk management.
And the effective executive, again, knowing when to be pragmatic versus principled.
Exactly. Drucker says effective executives know when a decision has to be based on principle and when it should be made on the merits of the case and pragmatically. And they know the difficulty of choosing between the right and the wrong compromise.
That sounds like wisdom born of experience.
It has to be. That sophisticated judgment doesn't come from a manual. It's forged by facing complex, messy situations and learning, sometimes the hard way, from the outcomes of past choices. It's about internalizing consequences because you are invested in the results.
And finally, the black swan gives that stark warning about intellectual insulation. Confirmation bias.
Yes, a really powerful warning. Once your mind is inhabited with a certain view of the world, you will tend to only consider instances proving you to be right. And the paradox is, the more information you have, the more justified you will feel in your views, even if they're totally wrong.
So being smart isn't enough.
Not if you're insulated. A lack of challenging evidence, or crucially, a lack of personal consequences for being wrong, just reinforces flawed perspectives. It stops real expertise from developing. Without putting your intellectual skin in the game, actively seeking disconfirming evidence, risking being proven wrong, it's easy to live in an echo chamber, totally detached from reality.
Okay, so connecting all these threads, the personal, the organizational, to the bigger picture, this idea of skin in the game isn't just about individual choices, is it? It seems to shape our entire economic systems, our societal structures.
Absolutely. When you zoom out, you have to ask, how do we build a fair, resilient, productive society? And the answer seems deeply tied to how these systems distribute risk and reward.
So it's about system design.
It raises that fundamental question. How can we design systems that encourage good risk-taking, genuine innovation, but also ensure the benefits and, critically, the costs are shared more equitably? Without considering who carries the risk, any system is prone to unfairness and instability.
Milton Friedman, in Capitalism and Freedom, argued that a lot of inequality comes from market imperfections caused by government.
Yes, he argued that much inequality derives from imperfections of the market, but that these imperfections have themselves been created by government action or could be removed by government action.
Like monopolies or tariffs.
Exactly. Special monopoly privileges granted by government, tariffs, and other legal enactments benefiting particular groups. He saw these not as market failures, but as government interventions creating artificial asymmetries. They let certain groups benefit hugely without taking equivalent risk, directly fueling inequality. They get the upside, minimal downside, thanks to state protection.
And the value of everything looks at the state's role in investment and innovation.
Right. It raises a critical point. If the state takes big risks, investing in basic R&D that often underpins private sector breakthroughs, then the issue is how the state can reap some return from its successful investments, the upside, to cover the inevitable losses, the downside.
To avoid socializing losses and privatizing gains.
Precisely. If the public bears the risk of state investments, shouldn't the public also share in the rewards? If the state has skin in the game through investment, there needs to be a mechanism for it to benefit from successes, creating a more balanced cycle of innovation and funding.
Then there's Keynes and his ideas about financial markets and speculation.
Yeah, from the general theory. Keynes noted how organized markets create huge opportunities for speculation, people profiting just from predicting market moves, maybe without creating any real underlying economic value.
So the skin in the game there is purely speculative.
It can be, which creates another kind of asymmetry, often benefiting those with better information, faster tech, or just luck, rather than those actually building or producing things.
And Keynes also had that controversial idea about redistribution potentially boosting growth.
Yes, he challenged the standard view that growth depends mainly on the savings of the rich. He suggested that measures to redistribute income, to raise the propensity to consume among the broader population, might actually be positively favorable to the growth of capital.
So a wider base of people with spending power is good for the economy.
That was his argument. It suggests that systems allowing more people to have genuine economic participation, real skin in the game in the economy's success through their consumption and well-being, could be more beneficial overall than concentrating wealth and risk unevenly.
Moving beyond economics, though, this concept feels fundamental to trust, doesn't it? How we
Hmm.
build relationships, the culture of an organization.
Absolutely. It's about shared destiny. And skin in the game seems to be a fundamental guarantor of ethical behavior and trust. Without it, trust just erodes.
The 7 Habits really emphasizes character over personality for trust.
He beautifully put Emerson's quote, "What you are communicates far more eloquently than anything we say or do. Real trust is built on character, who someone is, not what he pretends to be. A lack of integrity, duplicity, just destroys effective collaboration. Your true self, your real skin in the game through consistent values and actions, that's what builds trust. Your actions have to match your words."
And the systems need to support this, the idea of win-win systems.
Crucial. Covey argues for win-win to work, the systems have to support it. Training, planning, communication, compensation, everything has to be based on that principle.
So if incentives are aligned for mutual benefit,
Then problems like managers stealing sales from their team or departments hoarding information, they just tend to disappear. Everyone's success is tied together. It fosters collective responsibility and ethical culture. Your skin is tied to the team's skin.
and this requires maturity, that balance of courage and consideration.
Yes, Covey's definition. Maturity is the balance between courage and consideration. To get to win-win, you need to be both nice and tough, empathic and confident, considerate and brave. It implies standing firm on your values, but also truly understanding others. It's a demanding kind of ethical skin in the game.
And conversely, the 5 dysfunctions of a team points to the absence of trust as the root problem, often showing up as silence.
Exactly. The absence of trust is the foundation of dysfunction, and it often manifests as a lack of debate in meetings. That silence isn't agreement, it's fear.
Fear of consequences.
Right. Team members don't feel psychologically safe to disagree, to challenge ideas, possibly because the consequences aren't shared equally. If only the person speaking up bears the risk, there's no shared skin in the game for candor, so people stay quiet.
And Team of Teams offers a practical fix for that mistrust, like Alan Mulally at Boeing.
A powerful example, fostering a working together culture by forcing interaction between separate groups, using tech for constant systemic transparency.
So everyone sees everything.
Pretty much. It created this old school team-like oneness by making sure everyone had visibility and a stake in the whole project's success. It broke down that dysfunctional internal culture of need to know and competitiveness and replaced it with collective skin in the game. Everyone saw and shared the outcomes, good or bad.
Okay, this brings us to a really interesting final point. If problems are often profoundly asymmetrical, a few things causing most of the effect.
Does the solution also need an asymmetrical application of skin in the game? It's a fascinating question. Where do you apply the leverage?
Revenge at the tipping point makes this case strongly, right? That small numbers do all the work.
Yes. The problems we deal with are profoundly asymmetrical, meaning that a small number do all the work. And when I say small, I mean really, really small. The example of Donald Stedman's emission testing is perfect.
Finding just a few cars caused most pollution.
Exactly. A tiny fraction of poor cars were responsible for the bulk of the pollution. It shows how a minuscule number of actors can have this massive negative impact, often without any direct, immediate personal skin in the game for the collective cost. They're insulated from the scale of their negative impact. And the insight there is profound. It suggests that targeting those with the biggest negative impact, or maybe those with the least skin in the game regarding the collective good, could yield disproportionately positive results.
So focus the accountability where the impact is greatest.
Identify where the asymmetry is most pronounced and apply pressure, or introduce accountability right there. It's about finding the leverage points. It's not necessarily about equalizing all outcomes, but about ensuring that exposure to consequences, the skin in the game principle, is applied where it will have the most significant and most ethical impact.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into the ethics of risk, into skin in the game, it really has shown just how fundamental this principle is. It runs through everything, our professional lives, public life.
Absolutely. From the chaos of financial markets to corporate boardrooms, political power, even just day-to-day leadership. The presence or absence of shared consequences, it really shapes everything.
We've seen how detaching people from the downsides can fuel recklessness, fragility.
While genuine accountability, real personal investment, fosters resilience, trust, and that hard-won expertise we talked about.
The pattern seems clear across all these different areas.
It really does. When institutions truly bear the consequences of their choices, the outcomes just tend to be more thoughtful, fairer, and ultimately much more robust and sustainable. The evidence seems pretty unambiguous.
So as you, our listener, reflect on all this, maybe consider where you encounter these hidden asymmetries in your own life. Where do you see people or institutions getting the upside without really facing the downside?
And maybe more importantly, where can you in your own sphere, your team, your community, even just your personal choices advocate for or maybe embody a greater sense of skin in the game? How can you help foster more equitable, more responsible outcomes?
Think about what happens when people's own well-being, their own skin, is genuinely tied to the decisions they make for others. It really does change everything, doesn't it?